Hello friends, thank you so much for joining me. My name is Lindsay and today we'll go over how to do a Chaturanga push-up. So these push-ups are really common in vinyasa classes, in power yoga classes. Any class kind of labeled a flow will likely take this Chaturanga push-up quite frequently, during the class. But the pose itself is pretty hard. It's the bottom of a push-up. You're really engaging into the triceps. You're really engaging in the back body, especially the shoulders. And as well, you're squeezing into the core too, because you go from a high plank to almost a low plank, right? So this isn't necessarily an accessible pose to all. If it's something you want to work on, this is a great tutorial to do to strengthen those areas. And even if you're taking a flow class or you're practicing at home, I'll show you some modifications, how to practice Chaturanga safely. And maybe you never come to the most advanced position, and that's totally fine, right? Yoga should be catered to your practice, and that's why it's your practice, rather than trying to be competitive with whoever's teaching the class or whoever's in the class, trying to do what they're doing. That's not the point. So I'd rather just focus on form over trying to advance too quickly or just trying to advance in the name of advancement. So I quickly just want to show you what our shoulders are doing behind the back, because this is a common mistake. So instead of retracting the shoulders in and squeezing the shoulder blades together, we want to think about protracting the shoulders, so spreading them away. As we do this, we should be widening through the collarbone. Now I say this because a lot of students, when they're trying to advance into Chaturanga a little bit too early, you want to mimic what the teacher is doing, and they're up on the toes, they're up with the knees lifted. Instead of broadening through the collarbone and spreading the shoulders, they start to collapse, the shoulders shrug up, and maybe their seat starts to lift as you do this because your back will likely start to arch. And not that Chaturangas feel good, but you should feel stable in them. This one definitely feels, as I was doing that, really tense. My shoulders hurt, my back, I could feel a little bit of tension. And if you were to do that over and over and over again in a class, you would obviously kind of build up a little bit more tension in those already pretty sensitive areas. So this is just a little reminder. Take the variation that works for you, that feels tolerable or maybe even feels good. So before I move with the blocks, the first modification you should know is the option to go to your knees. So if you're on the top of a plank pose, you can have the toes lifted. A lot of people prefer to have the toes on the ground. It might just kind of, visually encourage you to think about lengthening the spine and thinking about drawing the tummy in. When I notice people start to lift the toes, sometimes I see people a little bit sinking the hips down. So as long as you're doing the proper form here, and you're drawing the tummy in, you can have the toes lifted or you can have them on the ground. So we're in the top of a modified push-up. We want to come forward a few inches here. And as we bend the elbows, our elbows stack over top of the wrists. If we weren't to shift forward and we were just plonking down, you'll notice that my elbows actually start to graze really far back. They're not stacking over top of my wrist, and this can cause a lot of issues into the shoulder and into the wrist as well. So that's one variation. Coming from the knees, shifting forward, coming halfway down. This is a Chaturanga, and then maybe down to the tummy after a quick hold before we come into our Cobra. This position is still quite hard. So maybe we need to take some blocks. I'm going to use the mid-height for my blocks and take them kind of right underneath my shoulders. So my hands will be just around the block. I'm kind of creating a little L shape to go on both corners. Spreading the fingers wide, hands underneath the shoulders, draw the tummy in. I'll start from my knees. Again, shift forward, come down so that the shoulders stack over top of the blocks. Now, if this doesn't feel good, you can always move the blocks a little bit further in front and take the hands right underneath the shoulders so that the fingertips just kind of graze the block there. Same idea, shift forward, come down into your Chaturanga. Now, you can always do this one from the toes as well, and hold, and you're still using a lot of strength. I can feel my core shaking a little bit as I do that, and I can feel it quite into my triceps, quite a bit I should say, as well as into my shoulders. Now we'll do one more kind of final variation. I would suggest doing this variation from the toes. So say you've progressed from the knees, you've used the block, you're on your knees without the blocks, and you're trying to advance in this full variation with the knees lifted. So I'll take the first block kind of right underneath this little shoulder area, just above the breastbone, and then I'll take the lower back block, pardon me, just underneath the quadriceps, probably just around under the hip area, so high quadriceps. Coming up onto the toes, protract through the shoulders, spread the fingers wide, shift forward to take some weight into the fingertips, and as you lower, the blocks will help you hold this. So notice if the elbows are not stacked over the shoulders, the elbows are not tracked over top of the wrists, maybe you're not coming far enough forward. Try to stack the ankles over top of the toes, squeeze the quadriceps, squeeze the core, draw the elbows to the rib cage, and think about widening through the collarbone. Come back up. Whew. Quite hard to hold, even with the blocks there. So you can practice this at home. Remember, wherever you're at, that's where you're meant to be right now. Don't push it. The blocks are always there to help you and guide you into a safe posture and to really focus on your alignment. So I hope this was helpful, and I hope to see you soon. Namaste.